everyone, welcome to the Space in Between podcast. I'm Chantel, and tonight we are going to talk about the black male vote. Fighting for the black male vote. We are excited to talk about this topic, and tonight we are gathered in the space and we are joined by Cherie, Lorenzo, and Jordan. Say hey.
Hey.
And Kyrie. So,
Hey.
Honey, hi. So we're hello. So it's been a minute since we've been gathered. Since I think it was August. What's been going on?
Wow, August.
I know it's like a long time. You got to go back like August. Lots.
Oh, for us, Linda's in college.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, we launched our lastborn.
Lastborn out.
You know,
lastborn home.
we talked about that on the show last time, right?
Right.
That there was excitement that
Yeah.
Linda was able to go to school.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then like
Yeah.
a few days after that episode, the school was shut down.
Right.
And then there was the adjustment of, you're not going to campus and leaving home. And then you guys made a way. So what is your life like now? I know, but I want you to share the new things since your daughter has gone to school.
Well, yeah, she's in a house with 8 other people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's lovely.
Yeah.
We really
COVID free.
Yeah,
COVID
COVID free.
You know, they wear masks.
They're amazing kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're super responsible and probably more responsible.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say they're a different group, these St. Johnnies.
Yeah.
So
Johnnies. Yeah.
these Johnnies, and
right across the street from the campus.
So we are enjoying Linda in that space.
Yeah.
And because she's not living on campus, she's living with people. We are enjoying meeting new people and the kids, their parents.
And do you feel like now it's October, because that is a different kind of scramble you all had to go through? It's different when you think you're like outfitting a dorm room than outfitting the needs of a house.
Yeah.
Oh, that was crazy.
Yeah.
It was exhausting.
But it worked out. I mean, we found furniture from IKEA.
Yeah.
Friends gave us furniture from my office. I mean, we worked it out. The house is beautiful. The furnishings are better than anything we could imagine as
better than
college students.
College students. It's a nice house. So,
Jordan, what was it for like your home?
Mm-hmm.
And were you looking forward though to sister being home? Was there a little like looking forward to that?
So I was trying to plan for us to go to Puerto Rico in December and January, because I figured if she's online, like you can do school anywhere. Yeah. And Nathan might have been online. So we were all planning a trip to potentially go to Puerto Rico, but that couldn't happen. But I still think we can make it happen in some ways, but Linda's really now devoted to her group of like studying and all that. So I'm still planning on trying to go to Puerto Rico, but
she wants to be COVID free. That's still
Linda's become very, very conscious of COVID, and that's been really good. So I mean, the biggest thing was just like, I think we made plans, but other than that, I see her quite often, so it's good.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah. So, how are you doing, babe?
Kyrie?
I'm good. Just busy.
I know he's like, let me clarify the babe, because I do call him.
Oh my God. Ew.
You talking to me or you talking to Lorenzo? I know he's talking to me. Now I'm confused.
Go
All right,
go ahead. I'm talking to you, honey.
Okay. Well, now that we got that cleared up.
Right.
Which me?
No, it's just this whole house thing, like we were talking about last week, just getting through that process, and got the inspector coming in on Saturday. So just hopefully on the downswing of this whole process. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to, at least for a short period of time, finding some semblance of normalcy, I guess you want to call it that. So this week was kind of good. And I think I slept a little harder because, we were just kind of tired and all that stuff. So just going through back and forth between the houses. So hopefully a little bit more normalcy is in our future soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
And I think since the last time we talked, we celebrated 16 years.
Woo, woo.
So,
Yeah, guys.
Yes, 16 years.
Very nice pictures.
So tonight, we are gathered to talk about the Black male voters for Trump. And before we get into the topic, I just thought I would hear from all of you guys and just share, like, what are, like, when this topic came out, is this something that was new to you, that there is a group of Black males for Trump? Was it, for me, it was new. It was like, what? I didn't really know that. So how did it hit you guys, Black males for Trump?
Well, I can tell you that seeing some Black folks in Trump rallies, it didn't come as a surprise that there'd be Black men for Trump. And, throughout history, there have been Black for the Republican Party, for both parties and all parties. So it didn't come as a huge surprise. What was a surprise to me is just the amount of attention.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Larissa said it best. Especially coming out of Reconstruction, et cetera, the vast majority of Blacks were Republicans because that was the party of Lincoln. Coming out of it, and then obviously coming into, coming out of, Nixon. Jackie Robinson was one of the most notable, Republicans who is at the time best friends or besties with Nixon until Nixon didn't need him anymore, and then kicked him to the curb, all intents and purposes. But there's been, especially since the 60s, a very crazy kind of relationship between the Black voter and the Republican Party. There is a strong contingent within that, a very small, but a very strong contingent within that. And I think it has to be stated that, quite frankly, the Black vote is not monolithic, and especially particularly the Black male vote, because there are different paradigms, different things that the Black male particularly is looking for out of this whole deal than, say, the white woman or even the Black woman coming into this. So it's a specific type of demographic it's always been a little murky and always been a little interesting, but it's one that is in contention, right now. And I think surprisingly in more ways than not, coming into this new, 2020 election season.
Yeah. Cherie, Jordan, were you shocked to hear that there was a Black male contingency for Trump?
So to answer your question, like Lorenzo, not shocked, maybe surprised by how it's being packaged and presented, and so I'm a little curious about that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what is real, what isn't real,
right?
What is someone just sensationalizing, and so forth. But I mean, we do have Candace Owens out there as a Black woman for Trump, and so we'll have our counter. But I did want to, as we talk about this tonight, I think it's really important to really try to understand why there are Black men, women for Trump, but we're talking about Black men. And in unpacking that, I also want to say, for myself, understanding doesn't mean agreeing with the way it like understanding a problem doesn't mean one agrees with the manner in which that problem would be solved, i.e. Trump is going to be is the instrument used to solve my problem. Because I think it's important to really try to see, okay, what's going on here? that a constituent that you wouldn't think would vote for Trump. And it has nothing to do with Blacks being in the Republican Party. We've had that. But Donald Trump is a different cat. So it's fascinating to really try to understand, okay, I really want to know why anyone would vote for President Trump.
Right.
Particular
Black.
men.
Yeah. Yeah. Jordan?
Not surprised in the slightest. I know Black men that have voted for Trump. Yeah, I think what's been surprising has been the age demographic of Black men that have voted for Trump. Those that I do know are typically younger in my peers. And so that's been something that's been interesting to see, that it's not even the traditional, what you would sometimes think in the conservative camp of your men who have been able to kind of generate wealth for themselves, but it's been more of the, my age post-grad college students and younger who are, following the likes of, Kanye and 50 Cent and all those people. And no way was I really surprised. It was just more so seeing the evolution of the demographic that he's touching, and geographically as well. Like, it's not just your suburban areas, but it's your cities and your highly diverse cities as well. So that was, I guess, more the shocker part of it for me. But the idea of Black men voting for Trump wasn't at all.
Shawnee, let me just, if I may add, also what Kyrie said about being monolithic. It's Kyrie, thank you for bringing that up, because I actually had notes on that, and Cherie touched on it as well. We are, it's interesting hearing people say, well, you're Black and therefore, you should be voting a certain way. And that they'll say that to me, maybe they say it to Kyrie, and that we, all Blacks should be voting or thinking alike. And I've had to tell people, we're not a monolithic group. I mean, and then up, it's like, monolithic means, you're intractable, you're indivisible and uniform in thought and position. Well, we're not. We come in all shapes, sizes, forms, colors, hues and political thought, and we're individuals. I think of, you don't lump the Hispanic, they try to lump the Hispanic community or Latinx community as one monolithic group. Yet, Cuban Americans don't think the same as Mexican Americans or Honduran Americans or Guatemalan Americans, others from Central America or South America. So it's fascinating to think that, African Americans, should all be, because we do have a sort of a uniform history, and our DNA is shaped by, what happened in this country to us. Doesn't mean that we all have the same political views or social or economic views. So.
Yeah, different experiences, shapes, different. Yeah,
that's a great point. Well, the Pew. Go ahead.
One of the things I've also seen is that there has been a narrative that I've been hearing for quite some time in private conversations, but also online as well, is the fact that people are like, we're being taken advantage of, and it's getting to the point where people are like, okay, you want to come around and go to the Black churches, you want to go to the Black neighborhoods once every 4 years because you need the vote, get the vote, and then boom, they're gone. We don't see you again, right? And I think this is where, while I think it's not fully thought through, and I think it is naive in many ways, I see where the Kanye, Ice Cube, sort of thought process comes from with this whole thought process in terms of not necessarily just showing allegiance to the Democratic Party, and specifically, what are we getting out of this? What are you going to put in place that are actually going to make the lives of Black people in America better, right? And so they put it to the Democratic Party. You should put it to the Republican Party as well. But the point is, there hasn't been a truly honest answer, to that. And even with the night with the crime bill, right? I said, yeah, there were a lot of bad things that came out of it, but also understand there were a lot of good things that were actually in it. Things that actually, unfortunately, got pulled out by the GOP. So the only thing that was left really were the bad things, right? The defense, for women, the Defense Against Violence Against Women Act, funding for different aspects of within the disadvantaged communities for job training and placement. And so all that stuff got pulled out. Okay, so yeah, what was left was that which has incarcerated many Black men and women and brown people, you know, across the country. But again, it's not a simple question of, you know, what can you get my vote? Now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, but what are you going to give me for my vote? And I think that is an important question that needs to be asked. I think there is an important thing that a lot of people are putting forth out there. But now it's just about, I think some people get caught up in the show. And I think right now Trump is giving everybody a show without a whole bunch of substance behind it. But it is a show, and he's a master at it. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people, and especially a lot of Black people, that get caught up in that particular show because he's been doing it forever.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I was doing some reading and some watching of some video clips of Black men explaining why they vote for Trump. And about 3 of them repeated his phrase line, which I found was like, wow, it's fascinating. And it says, Trump's done more for the Black community since Abraham Lincoln, right? And I'm like, and I think that like he you know, it's like, boom, you know, I hear it, it's simple, I can repeat it. It's like this tagline. And, you know, you know, I think that it helps.
Don't forget LBJ.
Exactly. And so one of those reasons, let's talk about, and Sheree, I loved how you said, like, yeah, we want to talk about it to try to understand, right? And spend some time thinking about it on this side, why Black males have increased their numbers, or at least it seems like there's going to be an increase this election in terms of numbers of Black males voting for Trump than it was in 2016. And in 2016, Pew Research showed that the exit polls revealed that Donald Trump had won the highest percentage of Black male voters that any GOP candidate had, and he won it by 8%. And so one of the reasons, Kyrie, that you kind of kicked us off with is that Black males have been forgotten by the Democratic Party, particularly Black males. So I wanted us to just spend some time like talking about that reason, and if there's any, like, you know, if there's like, hey, yeah, there's something to that thought that they've been forgotten.
Well, Shauna, you know, you talked about the numbers, you know, of Blacks that have been voted for Trump in 2016. There's been a gradual, and I don't know when it started, but you know, pick any election, right, last 10 elections, there's been a gradual increase of Republicans gaining more and more African-American votes. I mean, it could be a half a point here or half a point there, but over the years, you know, you can see the increase. And I think some of that has to do with what Kyrie said, that, you know, Democrats have taken African-American vote as a monolithic vote for granted. But I also think there's one other area that I see where the Black vote, there may be a number of Blacks increasing voting for Republicans, and it starts even at the local level. So if you look at what's happening down ballot, so you could have you have folks who are running for House or congressional seats who are looking for that Black vote in some of their districts, and they're actually Republicans who are moving and reaching that community by saying certain things and getting them to believe that they are, you know, been forgotten by their traditional allies. Right. And so so when you have that down ballot energy where some of them are voting for Republican senators, I bet you the numbers are pretty similar. Yeah. That translates also to the national presidential election as well. Yeah. So I think, you know, we got to watch those numbers as folks are trying to penetrate. I mean, even, you know, governors and state legislators and state members of the U.S. Senate and their respective districts and states and members of Congress trying to penetrate the Black vote because they need that number. They need some of those. If they can peel off a percentage here or there, and that can put them over the top in their respective local
vote. It seems to be a dual strategy. It seems to be a part of suppression and also engagement, right? Because it's also about proportion, right? Because while, yes, Trump got 8%, you know, before that, Barack got 6%. And before that, he got 4%. You know, the last person that got 8% was actually Bush, you know, of the Black male vote. So but it's the proportion, right? Because over the last, this last election in 2016 was the first time the actual Black vote went down. You know, the actual engagement and the actual disenfranchisement of the Black male, of the Black vote period went down, right? So it actually succeeded in the effort to get him over the edge by suppressing the vote, as well as and also by disenfranchising that vote, as well as we saw in Michigan. I mean, literally the election hung on 56,000 votes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. I guess I'm still curious as to what is what's going on, I guess, in at the psychological level for, I understand voting for Republican. Okay, I get that. I don't understand the appeal of Donald Trump. I wonder, and Jordan has leaned in, so she's gonna help me understand.
Help you understand.
But I almost wonder when I heard, because I saw the Facebook thing, you know, this chanting. It was almost like a gangster, and you know, Trump is a bit of a gangster, and it just felt like I don't know, is he tapping into like trying to pull like a brotherhood, or you know, when you're disenfranchised, when you're down, you know, like you can belong to this tribe. It just felt very, you know,
basic, like
primal.
Primal.
And so anyway, it's a curiosity.
Trying to find the book. Yeah, so just speaking on the psyche a bit. So having engaged some of these Black men that have voted for Trump, there's a bit of that. I think that's might be more of an intrinsic thing that is subconscious. But from and a good book to read on that, it taps into the identity politics. It's by Francis Fukuyama, and he speaks about the role of identity politics and just how it. It's called Identity: The Demand for Dignity and the Politics of Resentment.
The demand for dignity and the politics of resentment.
So I highly recommend that book, or if you don't want to read it, he did a lecture, I think with Stanford University on it. But anyway, moving on, back to the psyche part of it. So Donald Trump has a very accessible language, and I was kind of bringing this up with my mom in the kitchen today. In order to kind of feel like one can be president, be this icon, if you look at the Democratic stage from 2016 compared to the the Republican stage in 2016, I saw the Republican stage had a surgeon, you know, who was a reputable Black man, Dr. Ben Carson, now oversees HUD, and then you had the woman who ran Hewlett Packard HP on the stage, and you had just a diverse range of people on that stage that didn't represent the typical career politician, which has been a refrain in Donald Trump and Pence's debate, 47 years, Biden, what have you done? Right. So I think for, at least I can't speak from a Black man's perspective, but just as a Black person, what I've seen is that there's an ability to know in the Democratic side, as contrast, there were 2 Rhodes Scholars this time around. So in order to even get to be noticed, I had to be a politician and you had to be the best. So you had like the 2 Rhodes Scholars up there. Like it's, he's a Rhodes Scholar, and as well as Pete Buttigieg. So you almost had to be, there's a bit of a meritocracy that's involved in that. And so that isolates a whole group of people, and particularly Black men that haven't had that opportunity, if you're comparing Black men to white men, to be able to they can see themselves maybe as a businessman, but entering the political arena doesn't seem as, you know, as an opportunity. But I mean, Donald Trump has, in the end, said very accessible language. And he's, you said this back in around 2016, Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss did. I think it's brilliant.
I know his slogan, keep America great again. His also make America great again.
It's very rhythmic. If you look and he'll say, I'm very, this was very, very bad, or it's very, very glad. Like it's very Dr. Seuss-ish.
Right.
Accessible.
And while we can look down on that, which is what I think the Democratic Party has done, is seeing it as reductionist and elementary, at the end of the day, he's speaking to people. And when if we do engage in politics and take a moment, for me as the average human being for my TV shows, and I actually turn on, whatever my news source, whether that's Steve Kornacki crunching numbers or Fox, I'm not going to want to really listen to a whole lot of cerebral material as to why I should vote for you. I want a clear message, and I think that Trump delivers that in a way that's accessible. And he also, unlike what I've seen in the past, is he continued to hold the voters' hand throughout his entire presidency. He never stopped campaigning. And that is something I think the Democratic Party has, we failed to do. They get, their win, and then they're like, all right, round 3, we'll start up again. So that's just at least some insights, I guess I would say, into the psychological factor.
Shawnee, what's interesting what Jordan said about the Dr. Seuss and keeping the language, elementary, so to speak. It's fascinating that actually is resonating with white college educated men.
Yeah.
So, so you would think that, more of the, sophisticated language, or, maybe that's the wrong term, but, more advanced language, English language, and degrees and things like that, education would play a role. But he's actually, and you would think that, given what Jordan said about the Dr. Seussing it, that a person with a limited vocabulary and education would resonate with them. White men with college degrees actually that's resonating with, his language is resonating with.
Yeah, because I think that when I think about like the Dr. Seussing it, and I don't look at it as elementary, I look at it as it's accessible, because I don't have to be, think about it, Kyrie and the world that he does professionally, there's a whole different language, right? Vocabulary. And if I was to sit in a room with a bunch of them talking, I'm educated, but I would lose a lot. I would have to have things translated. I would have to get things understood. Even if you go to the education sector, lawyers have their language, doctors have their language. So I think what Donald Trump has been able to do, and I've always said I think it's quite brilliant, is that he makes language accessible to everybody. He uses words and jargon and emotives that are accessible to everybody. And politics is its own box. It has its own jargon, and those of us that are tapped into it a little bit more or follow it a little bit more, it is a part of our language too, right? So we may not necessarily think about it that way, but for a lot of people that are across the country, it's like listening to a lawyer speak, and you're not a lawyer, and so I think that that's why he can get educated, folks, because he makes it accessible. And once you feel like you can understand a thing, then you can like puff out your chest and talk about it. You can join in this conversation in ways that, and I think that that's what Donald Trump has done. I think it's something that Democrats should kind of take note of. Like, that's a plus that he's added, that he has allowed, right? He's made a pathway for people to feel like they can join in the conversation. No matter what you think about what they're saying, they can participate. And I think that matters.
And I also think that links well with people who have been disenfranchised.
Right.
The same reasons, much lower levels,
right?
Obviously.
Right.
And for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But those who might be attracted to his message are the same people within the Rust Belt that was attracted to his message, in terms of just feeling ignored, feeling like they were going to be left out.
Right.
If you listen to some of the, some of the things that these guys were saying, they could have been saying that in a little town in Ohio, or, you know, someplace when they were talking about, yes, we're gonna, you know, stop China from taking our jobs and things like this. I mean, he tapped into, I'm feeling unseen.
Yep.
I'm feeling like nobody cares. Mm-hmm. That dignity piece that this book is talking about. If I can't work, and I listened to a talk the other day, and somebody said, if we would just attend to the dignity of people,
right,
the other things, we would solve the other problems. We would, if we could just remember to attend to our dignity and to, then we would then think differently about job creation, about education, about healthcare. If our goal was to make sure every American had dignity.
Yeah.
Well, Trump hasn't accomplished that, and certainly in the African American community with African American males. Like I said initially, Chantel, I'm not worried or concerned about that, the numbers and who, you know, who's actually black men that are voting for Trump or support Trump or believe his message. I think that is a trend that we are seeing in the Republican Party in general with African American voters, specifically African American male voters. So I'm not really overly concerned. I was surprised by, when you asked the first question, you know, did it surprise us? I was surprised by the amount of attention that it got.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, Trump, given what he has said about people of color, what he has said about women, what he said about immigrants, you know, and Cherie talks about the dignity. Well, he's shown no dignity there. So I'm confident, you know, that block of African American voters, block of women voters, which actually make up the majority of the Democratic Party now, you know, as a block, single block, I'm feeling very confident that those numbers, while we'll see some of it chip away over the years, I think, and if like Cherie said, if the Republicans find a candidate that resonates with what Cherie said, then I think the Democrats really need to be concerned about that.
Which is, to me, why we're even talking about this insignificant number of disenfranchised Black men who are going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
We're not worried about Trump getting the Black vote.
Right.
But I do think it's important to understand that little, you know, everything, things start out small.
And they grow.
I think it is what we Democrats should not repeat the mistake of not addressing the problems in some of these communities that don't have, you know, that are under-resourced, that people are working 3 jobs just to put food on the table, to pay rent. Health indicators where our children may not live as long as we do, may not own a home when we were able to purchase a home, may never be able to purchase a home. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I believe that Vice President Biden and Harris, I mean, they're aware. I believe that this is a reckoning. We talk about a reckoning in terms of the racial justice piece. This is also a reckoning on dignity of people. You know, we are, what is it? They said for every 1 million people getting the coronavirus, 600 Americans. England is north of that number. 600 to everyone. 600,000. 600 are dying for every 1 million. Okay, right. And then England is north of that. And then you'll go to a country. They said even if you double or triple the numbers in China for the death, it's like 40 or 50 for every 1 million. Even if you say they've skewed the numbers. And I will, it was an economist talk that I listened to, so we can attach it to the show. Make sure that we attach that.
More Americans are dying.
More Americans are dying.
Period.
And
line, that's what
I'm trying to make more Americans are dying because of our failed government, failed systems.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the Black community, getting back to the Black male.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. I mean, Lorenzo went for a COVID test. We're still waiting for a COVID test. He went into
Results. Yeah.
Results. He went into a community that is typically underserviced in DC, Anacostia. He's still 5 days later, he went to a clinic. 5 days later, he's still waiting on a result. Now, we went to the fire station up in Northwest and got our results within, I wonder if it was 3 days, 4 days, right up the street, 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, 3 days.
And so I'm like, wow, here it is. We are experiencing the very thing that creates the disparity.
Right.
Anger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People are angry. And when sometimes you're angry.
This is also representative of the fact that, it's like when you don't have the representation, when you don't even have the legislative body, in place to even to put forth policies and directives in place to help in that respect, like to what you're talking about, some of these disenfranchised areas. I mean, it just cycles upon itself. It cycles and cycles. I mean, part of the critique against Obama was like, well, nothing really got done. I said, well, he didn't have a government. The only time he had control of the government was for 2 years, and he got something done. Now they spent the last 4 years trying to dismantle. Well, actually 8 years trying to dismantle it. Everything he put into place. Mm-hmm. But the point is, without that legislative body in place, which is why it's nice if you get the White House, but if you don't get the Senate too, it doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because Mitch McConnell's not going to allow anything to get through. He has made his bones to say nothing gets through unless it is along XYZ partisan lines. Period. The end. It doesn't matter. So they months after the CARES Act, and people lost their unemployment, stipend on top of their unemployment check. What is that? What's happened? Nothing. He's going home. Session's over until after the election, right? Because then, okay, maybe you have to do something then. Or maybe they can put something else in place that even if another Senate comes in, they can't override whatever they did. Something. They're going to do something. So this is the kind of thing that when they're talking about elections have consequences, well, it's not just the presidential election, it's all the way down to your local leaders, right? And I think it's very incumbent upon the whatever party, whether it's Democratic or an independent party, to really make the case that if you really want positive changes within your community, you got to really start from the bottom all the way up. Because if your governors are still playing those partisan politics, and your city council still playing those party politics, it doesn't matter. What happens at the end of the day. And in terms of the and the male psyche, especially the Black male psyche, in terms of voting for Trump, I mean, I think it got to the point where some of them are just like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah,
I'm not getting nothing with the Democrats. Right. I'm not getting nothing with Republicans. Let me try this guy who's a quote not politician. Well, he's got 4 years, so now he's officially a politician.
He's a politician.
Now he's officially a politician. So you can't even have that as his banner to say I'm not a politician. Everybody's like, you've been in president for 4 years.
You've been in charge with the Senate.
But
what Lorenzo said is very important, because now it's kind of like, oh no, now you got a record. Now we've got a chance to see actually what you did and didn't do. So yes, you can say, oh, I'm the best president. I did more for Black people since President Lincoln. Yeah, okay, slow up, buddy. Let's actually now we can kind of look at the tape. Now I don't know everybody's going to do that, but I think, like I said, the voting block is proportional, right, to who actually votes. Now, with these lines out there, with the amount of engagement and enthusiasm out there, even if it is still 8%, the number of votes that are out there may just be tip the scale in the way that it needs to go to try to get things, moving in a different direction, And I mean, look at it, South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, you got Jamie Harrison. Listen, if the Black vote turns out the exact same way as it did in 2016, Lindsey Graham's gonna get another 4 years. But you swing that by another 2-3%, Jamie Harris is going to be senator.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be important, and I know Jordan wants to, she's leaning in, but it's going to be important for gosh, what was my train of thought here? For the when Carrie, when you said Democratic Party, they're not doing anything for us, Republican Party not doing anything for us, so what do I have to lose? Vote for Trump. I'm hoping that this time around, states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, where the Black population in Detroit basically said, I ain't got nothing to lose, I'm not voting for either one. And that's, that hurt Hillary, right? And then the same thing happened in Philadelphia, where they just said, you thought we would have gotten Pennsylvania and Michigan with the population of Detroit and Philadelphia respectively, and it didn't happen. So I'm hoping that at least in those states that they do we come out and vote to tip the scales in those two states, because those are going to be critical electoral votes in the end.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think also an interesting thing when you look at the 8%, I would be interested to know of that 8%, how many were also a part of the 80% of evangelicals that voted for Trump in 2016. Because what we also have at play here, I think, is the role of religion. And when you looked at the, Black Men for Trump Facebook page, there were two large themes. They all had a historical originalist streak coming from, they would cite things like one guy, Paul Revere, and his story. Oftentimes you'll hear the Federalist Papers mentioned, all of the
scripture,
and so I was getting there. Yeah, so like essentially there's that first theme of history, and then and if you look at the foundation of this country, how closely it was tied to religion because of the Church of England and all that. But then you have then the religious streak with the issues surrounding pro-choice and pro-life, which if you heard a lot of the men, they said protecting the children. Trump's done a lot for surrounding trafficking. And I think that feeds in, whether we admit it or not, into the male spirit of protecting. And that primitive, what mom even said of that primal nature, that he's tapped into that primitive instinct of men's desire to want to protect. But you've seen an increase of actually women, being in the traditional conservative roles of, providing, for the family and doing that more generalized protecting type of work. And so getting back to it, so that's been kind of something that I've been thinking about is, there's the Black male vote, but all the Black men that I've known, and it's not a lot, but that did vote for Trump, said they were all evangelical Christians, and their primary reason was not something we talk about a lot as the executive branch and our legislative branch, but our biggest question to me has always been the Supreme Court, which we've seen the consequences of that this past couple of days. And one of the questions that's often used is the court becoming too imperial? Well, if you do say, it is, you want it to be in your favor and following your prescribing to your belief system. And so it doesn't matter who's in office, as long as you can have someone who's really directing the laws of the land, and this country is governed by laws and money, then, you're satisfied. And so that's just been my tip, is to say that in addition to all the other things that have been mentioned, I think religion and faith, because of the convictions, beliefs surrounding particularly, abortion and everything, that is a huge factor for men and Black men. They where they typically don't have the choice because it's a woman's choice, they're given the choice through Trump.
Yeah. Jordan, that's a good point that I didn't think about. But now I'm remembering, as you say, and I'm kind of like replaying videos and kind of re-going through articles that I read. And it was heavy on Paul Revere, remember that? And scripture and this sense of duty and protection and permission, not even permission, but I think tapping into what you were saying, or tying to what you were saying, Cherie, like Trump sent out a call, right? Like there's this call to action that just, I think he embodies or something, or like one guy said, Trump makes me feel like a man, you know? And mom is in the background, and she's quiet, but she did shout out. She was like, he's a street fighter. A street fighter. So, you know, but there is a woman, she's an associate professor at Rutgers, Brittany Cooper, and I wanted to read you a quote that she made about why she thinks Black men vote for Trump, and why it's something that she thinks that we need to pay attention to. I think, Cherie, you were getting to this. Like, yeah, the numbers are small, but her kind of look at it is, these are numbers. This is a group. We need to actually pay attention to it. And if we pay attention to it now, you know what I'm saying? Versus waiting for, you know, it to be bloom, it would be in the best interest. And so she says, and I quote, for a lot of Black men, their racial freedom aspirations is to be equal with white men, which is to say they want to be patriots or male dominant in the way that white men are. And she's an associate professor of women's studies at Rutgers University. And I found that was very interesting, like reading her kind of view of it. And I just listened to this, you know, young Black man saying, Trump makes me feel like a man. And so I think like just this issue of like maleness and when it comes to power, when it comes to ability or mobility, when it comes to dominion or over, you know, being able to, like, there's that strong voice over women's bodies and stuff like that, you know, I just thought that was an interesting quote that point that she raised.
Well, it ties to that whole patriarchal system.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Thank God.
I mean, but even if there's some aspect of that, I can say, okay, fine, I can go with it in terms of the equality thing. But I don't necessarily see it as an equality thing from the standpoint of being equal to the white man per se. I see it from the standpoint of saying, hey, I don't even have the opportunity to even have that conversation, and I want to be able to have that to be in that same room, kind of like, you know, the Hamilton,
right,
the room where it happens, the room, you know, to actually have that place, you know, at the table, at the seat at the table, to have that fair shot, where a lot of Black people feel they don't have that, and that they've been, you know, crying and asking and protesting all that stuff for it, but it doesn't come. And and if you look at it from an income disparity standpoint, I mean, the average Black family is making less now, it has less net worth now on average than it did back in 1983. Wow. I mean, it's gone up, and ever since, and specifically since and it went up incrementally, but especially since the financial crisis, it's gone down steadily every year, you know, since then. So the frustration, the ability, as you say, from a patriarchal standpoint, to take care of yourself, to take care of your family, it's been increasingly especially since the 80s, and obviously longer before then, become harder and harder and harder in this new world where the disparity between the Black and the white, especially from a net worth standpoint, is increasing. Because even coming out of the financial crisis, the average white family is still making more coming out of the crisis, almost no impact, you know, overall, than the Black and brown family, you know, who took the massive brunt of that. So you have this disparaged, you know, set of people, just like, I can't even feed my family, you know, and so they hear this person talk this and talk. We know that Trump, you know, inherited millions, you know, from his father. He's not a self-made billionaire, and everything. He's licensed out the yin yang, the whole 9 yards. All the stuff that, you know, he sells himself on. We know even during the Apprentice, he was basically in bankruptcy. He was faking it the entire show, you know, in terms of this idea of what and who he was, right? But the point is, he faked it well, and he sold it well. And I think there's a group of people that really believe and suck that in to say, even if it's faking, I like the way he fakes it. I'm gonna fake it until I make it kind of way, you know. And I think there's a part of that primal, that kind of innate, you know, greed and also patriarchal standpoint that says, if I just need to do that, he's going to give me a shot to do the same thing he did, even though we know it's not true. But there's just that idea, and that idea is infectious, and it has been very infectious to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And what that professor said is very disturbing, right? Because if that's what, you know, these Black men believe, then, and Trump is their you know, or our you know, fearless leader and advocate in that direction, then that's a problem. Because when you peel it back and you're like, wait a minute, the things he said about women, you know, his thoughts about women, where the role they should play, if that propels men, our primal instinct to feel better, to feel stronger, then, you know, that's a serious problem, especially, you know, men of faith. And as Jordan said, many of them are Christian men who are voting for Trump, Black men who are voting for Trump or support him. Then that's a problem. His treatment of immigrants, you know, the least of these. You know, that we should feel that we can do, you know, I feel like a man because I can propel and elevate myself over someone with less power, someone with less opportunity, you know, and make them feel less than, which propels me to feel more than. You know, I could go on and on and on about, you know, what he has described, you know, what would maybe described as, you know, manhood, to me is cowardly. It is misogynistic. It is it's almost a murderous spirit, and so I have a problem with that. She may be right, what she said, and that may be some folks who think like that.
Yeah.
And I just say, peel back the onion and really think, is that really what manhood is about? And especially coming from a faith perspective, absolutely not. And if these men are, and I'm not going to question or judge them on their faith, but I think there is a problem with accepting that rationale and that language and rhetoric as a definition of manhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, dear future husband, this is my father. He knows what manhood is, so please, you have a standard to live up to.
I love that.
Yeah, I Jordan, I love that. I was gonna say, you know, Lorenzo, you and Kyrie are have integrity, and you have a sense of dignity.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so I looked up the word dignity, and dignity, the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect.
Mm.
Now, the history of this country has not been a history where Black men or Black women have been where dignity has been offered, it has been assumed. That is not how most of us began. Our ancestors began their journey, and we remember the signs, the march. I'm a man.
Yeah.
We also know the speech, ain't I a woman? Just dignity, basic dignity, honor, worthy of respect. And so that's why I started this, I don't agree with the way these guys are choosing to think this is going to solve my problem. But I think it's really important to understand, to really kind of, perceive the intended meaning, like really perceive what's going on with them, so that we can create policies and think about what does it look like to have a society that proffers dignity on everybody. Right. And you know, I think that we would do well to spend time with that. Yeah. And Donald Trump is counterfeit. He's counterfeit at every level. I mean, and but we didn't get here with Donald Trump.
Right.
He's a symptom.
Right.
He's a symptom. And I just want to say this last thing. I think that Black people have to remember we did not need the wealth to confer dignity on ourselves and our community. We came stripped down. We've been stripped down. We learned how to proffer dignity within our community, and it wasn't based on wealth. It was based on commitment to family. It was based on, that dignity that people got in the church, in the Black church. We could put on our Sunday best and go to church.
You had ushers, the very fact.
We had ushers in our church. We were Mr. this and Mr. You were Dr. something, even if you didn't have it, you had a little bit of education, you were doc. I mean, we figured out ways to give ourselves dignity. And what has happened is we've departed from the very things that really allowed us to flourish as a people within a very oppressive system. We were still able to move forward. So what does it look like to really pay attention and not just say, okay, they're crazy, or all the things we can think when we're thinking about really any Black person? It's always a curiosity when we see them with the hat and in the behind Trump when he's doing his Mussolini thing. It is a curiosity. It is shocking that but I'm trying to say, okay, Cherie, what really is going on here? And then how do we figure out ways to offer dignity? I think that's what it's a cry for. Yeah. He's the most, he's all the things Lorenzo says and so much more. He's the complete opposite of it. But when we're hurting, people are not always rational, making rational choices. He was an irrational choice for a lot of people.
That's right.
Starting with white women who couldn't, let me not even get on that. Sit with the fact Kamala's coming for you.
Okay. Anyway, real quick, I had a question, and maybe for both Uncle Kyrie and Dad can ask or answer here, is because often I've thought of, yes, as Mom pointed out, Trump's a symptom to this greater call. What is the role of women in fulfilling that insecurity that Trump is instilling? And so, because what I mean by that is, like, obviously there, like, you saw these two waves of feminist movements, and we saw what came out of the Women's March, and a lot of Black women were like, yeah, that's not my feminism. Personally, I was like, yeah, this is a feminism, but it's not my feminism, because it's devaluing men. It's saying I'm better than men. It's not saying I'm equal.
That was me.
Right.
I was like, that's we're not at that march in the traditional way. And so I think one of the things I've asked is, like, what does it, we still haven't seen an equality across gender. So what would it look like for, and it's not saying it's our place or have to, I don't want to get into all that, like I have to do it, but genuinely, like, as a woman and as a spouse and as who has brothers and people who are men I love, how can I encourage them to not, just as they encourage me to not to feel, that I matter in this society, and a part of this, that I'm a part of the fabric of the American DNA.
Or to give dignity.
And so, like, what is as much as we've reflected on the role of Trump in that call, right? I think Dad brings a point that women are the largest block of this vote. What is the call? I think that's where a lot of the power is. What is the call of women? And then even a greater call would be, what is the question even that, why is would Kamala's call being having that more maternal aspect be to instill in the young Black men like a maternal spirit that no, you can be great as well, that frankly Biden can never tap into. And so that's something I thought was like, what is the role of women to fulfill that call that Trump has had, and what would you guys like think from that?
Great question, Jay.
Go ahead, Zoe, you answer.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting. I'm going to go one step back and almost on what Cherie ended with, and that was, white women and voting for Trump and supporting Trump, and why are they doing that? And you hear this theme of that they're doing that because they want to protect their white men. They want to make sure their husbands, their brothers, their uncles continue to maintain the dominance, the privilege, and all those things in society. I think, Jordan, for Black women to address any insecurities that Black men may have in this world, in this country, I think, having Kamala Harris and people like you and Cherie and Chantel and your daughters, who are really the future, one of the Democratic Party, if you choose to stay with the Democratic Party, but really the future of this country. And I think that, Black men in our history, we've been used to and are not afraid of our women, engaging with us. I won't say telling us what to do, but engaging with us and being very on equal footing with us. And we've learned and want to respect that. And so my call to Black women is keep, there are more of you out here getting degrees. You're out here engaging. I looked at the Black Lives Matter, and when we did the protests in DC, the front line were almost all women. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm looking at, what's happening in the political arena. I mean, look at this. There's actually, for the first time in this country, there's a strong possibility that we could have an African-American, a woman of color, as vice president of the United States, and potentially, president of the United States, before any other ethnic group in this country. That says a lot, and that means a lot. And I think, Black men need to understand that and respect that, and want to protect that and support that. So I would just say, we are not, Kyrie and I would let Kyrie speak for himself, are not afraid, and I think most Black men are not afraid of strong Black women, of a partnership of African-American women who are now in positions of leadership in business and in politics to be the tip of the spear. And I think, we will always be, as Black men, we're going to be a presence. We can't help that. And our Black women want us to be a presence and want us to have the dignity that Cherie's talking about. And so I think it's a partnership that has to happen. And that's how
both of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a whole bunch to add to that. That was really, really good. I think one of the things that, having a much more online presence and seeing is that, unfortunately, there is just too many times the success of Black women is used as a bludgeon instrument against Black men. So, look what she's doing. Oh, you can't do this, Black man. It's kind of like that, and it's a really weird dynamic that I've seen pop up over the years. And whereas, so it creates this automatic division, and this inability for there to be civility in conversation, conversing between the two. So, if anything, it's kind of like, I think if anything, it's the traditional, I would say traditional, one of the roles Black women have always played outside of being in the front lines, it's always just really been that support, right? The emotional support, definitely that spiritual support. And I think now more than ever, that's needed more than ever before, as while there's still a lot of growth within the African-American community, specifically in terms of moving into faith, there still seems to be this other division of, I'm moving into faith, but I'm moving into my own personal journey. I'm not really thinking about whatever it means for the greater community. So there's a lot of divergence in terms of community within faith, right? So, kind of bringing some of that back in terms of how that actually wraps around into the global Black family. I think is needed more now than ever. And no Black man should be afraid to say, it's like, no, we've needed Black women to be in our lives to help us in that respect, especially from that emotional respect, since time immemorial. And I think we as Black men need to also recognize, we need to actually really stand up for our Black women too. We need to also be that first cheerleader, for their success, not be the in competition with you, or to be, feel self-inflicted or have the lack of self-confidence because she has a PhD and you don't, right? And I think I think it's a big problem, as the Black woman specifically has found not only a voice, but a place within education, a place in achieving education, a place within business and developing businesses. I mean, just the other day, I saw, since I went to UVA with Kelly, she's got a home business on, and I'm seeing the commercials on TV, and I'm like, yo, that's Kelly. Like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Seeing that, but see, that's my reaction. Yeah. Where somebody else may look at me and say, oh, well, I ain't really like her in college. I'm like, no. Lift that up. That's what we need to do for one another, is to lift each other up. We may not know each other by names. We may not know each other by reputation per se, but I know when I still walk down the street, while it happens less and less every day, I can look at a brother and nod my head, and he nods back.
Yeah.
Right? I can knock and say, "What's up, sis?" She said, "How you doing, brother?" And we keep it moving.
Yeah.
But the point is, there needs to be continuously more and more of that, right? Where it is that communal lifting up, and I think that is the thing that I hope to see more of. I think we need to see more of within the community. I just, I want to see that. I want to see more.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit what I was trying to get at. Like, we knew how to put proper dignity on one another. We knew how to honor. We know how to honor. We know how to convey worth. And it is not a matter of, we learned how to do it without resources. Yeah. And sometimes affluence can be as debilitating or corroding as poverty. Not that, we obviously we don't want people in poverty, but we have to check the interior life and how that can sometimes decay our character and just different things. This affluence. Yeah.
Well, this is so good. We could go on and on, but we're gonna have to wrap up. But this is a really good conversation. We're gonna link the things mentioned. Jordan mentioned a book. Cherie, your talk, I think, The Economist. We're gonna leave links below if you guys want to check that out. And before we wrap up, we are officially 6 days away from the election. So quickly, I want to go around and get everyone's predictions for what they think is going to happen election night and what states they're really interested in. And then next week on election day, we're going to have a very special In the Space coverage where we're going to be checking in live, giving you guys our reaction as the polls come in and close. So as we go around,
Instagram page, so definitely check us out on our Instagram page.
Yeah, Instagram page. It's going to be on our Instagram page. So we'll start with Lorenzo. What's your prediction?
Wow. Okay. So I do predict that Biden-Harris will win. I think it's going to be tricky though because of the math of the Electoral College. And I watched what Obama did in both elections, and even what Trump did in 2016 with the Electoral College. And so I'm concerned about that. Popular vote may not necessarily always mean a victory. So, and I'm also concerned about the accuracy of the polls as well. Right. So I think it's going to be tight. But I do think in the end, whether there are court challenges or not, I do believe that that Biden-Harris ticket is the one will win. And they will be the next president and vice president. The states that I'm watching and concerned about, I mean, they're almost all of them, but the big ones are for me, North Carolina, Wisconsin. And just recently, I'm going to put Minnesota on the map as well. I mean, people are thinking Michigan and Pennsylvania, but Minnesota is one of those states as well that, could be a potential swing state. But I know definitely North Carolina and Wisconsin.
Okay, great. Sheree?
I'm gonna start with my states. So I'm looking at Florida. I'm looking, I think we'll be okay with Pennsylvania, but Florida, we've got a community in Florida that we don't really talk about, and I'm not going to talk about them right now, but I think we can influence the election. I'm not saying, but there's a community in Florida that could keep Trump in play, because there's a lot of money in Florida.
Oh, yes.
So I think that we can, and where there's lots of money, there is the potential of people voting for President Trump who want to protect their resources. So it's not just disenfranchised down and out folk voting for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So I'm looking at Florida, looking at Michigan and Pennsylvania. I don't think Pennsylvania, I hope, pray, it's not going to be a problem. But just watching it, I agree with Lorenzo that Biden and Harris will win. Having said that, everybody who's listening, make a plan to vote. I don't think it's going to be, some people say it's going to be a landslide. It should be a landslide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But people lie. People tell pollsters they are not going to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And they get in there and they will vote for him.
Yeah.
Because we are still a diseased society. We worship money.
Mm-hmm.
And because we worship money, we cannot take the head of racism.
That's right.
And sexism.
Right.
So people lie. It's actually not a popular thing to say I'm voting for Trump in most circles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that we have to make sure everybody gets out and votes.
Vote. Jordan.
So I'll start with the states. I'm looking at Florida, Ohio, as well as, what was my other state? I'm looking at Texas, but not from the reason that I think that it's going to be a red state or not. I'm looking at Texas from a local elections perspective because this is the tightest it's been in Texas through the city. So I'm looking at Texas as of my foreshadowing state for the future, but particularly Ohio and Pennsylvania. And following Winnipeg data, like it shows that this has been the closest Texas has ever been between a red and a blue. In terms of the candidate, so I digress from my family. I do believe, just if I'm having to follow history here, that Trump will win. I state this not from a standpoint of my own personal beliefs, but more so just the very resistance of trying to push out an incumbent. Historically, it is very challenging to do so. And then on top of that, as Mom said, I mean, I come from a Hobbesian perspective. I think people lie. And I think that I think that, it's just generally people want to know they can come home to a safe home. They want to know that they can go on vacation a few times a year and have the resources to do so. And they want to understand what your president's saying when he gets on the news, whether they agree with it or not.
And your fourth thing, education.
I didn't know if I could say that. So
you don't have to go too deep.
Okay. Okay.
She had four.
They're all racing. And yes, I think they want to be able to have autonomy over what their children are learning. Was that general enough?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think that those are the four reasons that people are emotional voters. And as much as I would love to see a Biden-Harris ticket flourish, I'm hesitant to really agree with that, especially if it goes contested. And Trump's we have a 6-3 now conservative court as the majority. And I mean, Gorsuch is a little, we'll see, but Thomas, but overall, I think Trump's going to win by a small margin.
Yeah. Kyrie?
The states I'm looking at Georgia. I think there is a good chance that it can turn blue. A slim chance, but I think there is actually one. Pennsylvania, I think will be fine. Michigan, I think actually will turn back, which I think is very critical because, I mean, even if Trump wins Florida, which I think he will, it's, if he wins Michigan, he wins Ohio, he wins Minnesota, Biden wins. I think especially if the others stay consistent as they have before, I think Biden wins based on the electoral votes those areas hold. So Florida, I think Trump holds on to Florida. I think, as Jordan said and Sheree said, I think there are a lot of things at play there, and DeSantis, although they're not going to let anyone but Trump have that state. As far as I'm concerned, they're going to do everything they can. I think North Carolina is a possibility. So I'm kind of looking at that. I think that'll be an upset surprise if that goes blue. And in South Carolina, I'm more looking at from a local level, from senatorial. So I'm thinking that Jamie Harrison has a real good shot. And I think with the I don't know what that means necessarily for the presidential candidate. I think it could still turn red for Trump in the general election. But I think there is a real good shot. I mean, Lindsey Graham has never been this unpopular in his own state. And no Democrat has ever had in many decades had ability to really challenge his reign there. So I'm really looking at that race specifically for the Harrison-Lindsey Graham race. And I agree with Jordan. Texas is definitely one to look at. Yeah. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's really tight. Mm-hmm. It really can go either way. It's going to be a massive upset if it goes Biden at the end of the day. I think legislatively it still stays Republican, obviously, but I think presidential wise, electoral college votes wise, if it goes Biden, that's going to be a huge, huge one. But I think the one that we also gotta look at, and it's not really, they say it's really not in play, but the more I read about it, the more I'm not say concerned, but just more I'm looking at it too, is California. There is a huge red wave, a swath of people really trying to take that state back in many different ways. So I don't think it's going to go red, but it's one of the ones that if it did, it'd be another upset surprise for the night. Yeah. But I think it's going to get called early. I don't think it's going to be at 2:00 in the morning. I don't even think it's going to necessarily go, it might, he can contest it all he wants, and he probably will, but regardless of the situation, but I think it's going to get called early.
For Biden?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, we have variety here with what we think is going to happen. It makes it very exciting.
What do you think, Chantel?
So I'm really interested in North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, just because Florida is always the state that's interesting, right? It's that kind of like, they always have drama in Florida. Mm-hmm. And Michigan as well. And I am siding with my niece on this one.
I called it 2016. I said he was going to win.
I think Jordan and I both called it 2016. I called it because of a show called Repo Wars, which I will not be linking down in the show notes below because you don't really need to watch it.
It's off the air anyway. Who cares?
Oh, okay. It's good. It's off the air. But I thought Trump was going to win in 2016. I think that he is going to win this election. I'm not happy about that, guys. I'm emotionally preparing myself for that. I think it's going to be close. I think the race is a lot tighter than what is being projected because, Cherie, I do believe that people get in those polls by themselves in those booths. And in this with this candidate, I think that there's the me that I want people to perceive me as, and then there's the me that does what I do when no one is looking. And that
people lie.
And it's more personalized now, mm-hmm. because before you had to go out and maybe walk and feel the slightest bit of shame when you walk to the poll if you were to vote for Trump.
Right.
But now it is in your home, and you look at all your wonderful TVs and cars you have.
Yeah.
You thinking you're making $400,000 more a year, and then you recall the tax increase on people who make more than $400,000 a year.
Oh God.
Exactly. It's like Ken said, it wasn't racial. It's like, look, Trump's gonna keep me rich.
I know. Well,
Like, that's why I'm gonna vote for Trump. It's money, but I think that people are going to vote for Trump, and especially I think that white women are going to do what they did for him in 2016.
especially with the Supreme Court nomination.
You got it, Niecy. That's what I'm
glad I have someone on my side.
It concerns me, but I think that that's why, which is why I'm not
Phil
having.
and I will be fasting.
They're more-
Anybody who wants to join us.
I just feel like such a weight on
Mom,
my.
I asked her, I said, Mom, who do you think she's gonna win? And without blinking, she said Trump.
Yeah.
Now,
Because he's a gangster. Well, let me say this. Yeah, Jordan, when he came down those elevators, I'll never forget escalators.
Mhm.
I'll never forget. She said, "Oh, this is our next president, Mom. We need to make America great again." And I was just, why? And she said, all the reasons, the image, and so we have to pray that America is actually interested in our democracy.
Yes. Yeah, lots of that needs to go on. And on a good note, we're gonna end the show on a good news.
Ours until it's gone.
Yeah, we're gonna end the show on a good news story. So this is good news from Black America, which is one of my favorite websites. I'm gonna leave it in the show notes below. But the PEN American organization, which is a literary and free expression organization, announced today that Darnella Frazier, the quick thinking and very courageous young woman who filmed the murder of George Floyd, will receive the 2020 PEN Benison Courage Award. And this award will be bestowed to the 17-year-old girl at their gala celebration, which will be virtual this year on December 8th. The CEO of the organization, Susanna Nozel, said, "With nothing more than a cell phone and sheer guts, Darnella changed the course of history in this country, sparking a bold movement demanding an end to systemic anti-Black racism and violence at the hands of police." So to Darnella, we honor you.
Yay.
Yes. Well done. Yeah. So guys, it's been so much fun hanging out in the space with you all. We will see each other back on election day, where Jordan and I do pray. This is one where I hope I am wrong. I will happily, yes, hope that I am wrong. But until then, guys, stay safe. Bye.